Hello, everyone. I'm Jonna Burke, the Global Managing Director of AMEC, and it is a wonderful pleasure to welcome you to Measurement Month 2020. We're so pleased to be joined by Brandy Bodner, the Manager of Digital and Advocacy Communications with IBM, who is one of my favorites, always brings a lot of great insights to her presentations and always brings a whole new level of I think value to what's going on in the corporate world and what we can do within the measurement and evaluation space specifically to kind of be thinking more like the professionals and how we can do better. So I don't want to spend any more time than necessary. I'm just going to cover a couple of housekeeping items. The first is if you can please put any questions that you have in the Q&A. I'll try to monitor the chat as we go along, but I want to make sure that we do have time to answer some of your questions. So if you post those in the Q&A, I'll moderate those for Brandy at the conclusion of her presentation. So without any further delay, I'll turn the time over to you, Brandy. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jonna. That was such a warm, lovely welcome. I am so just honored whenever I get asked to speak around one of my favorite topics of data, and the fact that I get to do for AMEC Measurement Month is like a kickoff. November just started yesterday and it's Measurement Month, so I am thrilled to be here. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about dark data. And it's funny because John and I have been talking, I feel like, this topic for quite some time. And so it was very timely to talk about dark data, not just because we're in a global pandemic, not just because everybody is on, their devices, computers, or working from home. I know many people have gone shelter in place, but like, what's the value of dark data and how can we really use it to help our organizations grow or to discover insights around a customer, and really why dark data should be your new business strategy. So we're going to jump right in. But before I get started, for those of you who don't know me, Jonna didn't, she said who I am. You can affectionately call me the Beyonce of the business world. I would just like to say Beyonce released her second round of leisure wear this past week, and I was one of the few that got it before they sold out, because I do affectionately call myself the Beyonce of the business world. You can also call me the Beyonce of the business world. But I don't need to read for you my list of accomplishments. You can see them all here. But data is something I am extremely passionate about as a digital communications, expert. Even though I've kind of shifted gears a little bit given the current climate in the US, around the world, around social justice, data still plays a large role in what I do day to day and just things that I look for just as a digital communications professional. So let's talk about what I'm hoping that we're going to accomplish today, right? As we talk about dark data, and hopefully you ask me questions about dark data. But in today's digital acceleration, we know everyone is moving to digital, right? Everything is digital these days. Most of the data that we have is visible. However, there's a lot of hidden data in this socially connected world that's not really easy to find or easy to analyze. And so this is what we call dark data. And so dark data can be found, it's like logs, metadata, video, text messages, emails, all these things. So how the volume of dark data can, outweigh the volume of visible data that we can see, how do we make sense of all this? So modern communicators should be using emerging technologies. I'll talk about this a little bit more, like AI and automation, to understand dark data. And the minute you leverage and exploit dark data to gain insights, guess what? It no longer becomes dark. It's not dark anymore because you've pulled, or like shine a light, you've pulled the insights that you need for whatever you're hoping to accomplish. So 3 things that I am hoping at the end, again, with your questions. 1, learn how AI tools will be able to help you analyze dark data a little bit better. Understand how to make use of non-textual data, because that data doesn't always have to be dark. Some of it is and some of it isn't. And then how you can develop your own dark data strategy to unlock business value. So that's what I'm hoping to cover in the next, I'd say, 30 minutes or so. And to Jonna's point, I hope that you ask questions as we go. So I love the charts, and anybody who's ever seen me present, or if you've, gone, oh, the Beyonce of the business world, I love charts because charts, I just love data visualizations. I don't know, they just stick in my head. And this was one that was done actually mid COVID. So, not at the beginning, not like February, but mid COVID over the summer, around what happens in 60 seconds of every day in terms of our new reality. So, if you think about how Zoom has skyrocketed, we're on a Zoom webinar, right? How Microsoft Teams, how WebEx, how Skype, how all of these things have skyrocketed, and how many people use them every day. But this shows you what happens every 60 seconds. And just a couple of things I want to call out here. My social media platform of choice is Instagram. So I'm on Instagram quite often. Instagram users post almost 350,000 stories every 60 seconds. Now, what I love about this chart, and as I go through some of the statistics, what is so fascinating is I call these invisible insights because I'm going to give you like the data and you can see the data here. But think about some of the stats that I'm giving, all of the insights that you may not see in what does that mean? Okay, almost 400,000 Instagram stories every 60 seconds. I wonder if it could tell me something about a user. I wonder if Instagram has amazing targeting capabilities. And I will admit, they get me quite a bit. The Instagram ads that I get, they know me. Sometimes I wonder, is Instagram in my closet because they know me so well and I fall for it every single time they send me an ad. I fall for it because I am on Instagram all the time. But if you look at some of the other statistics, again, this is what happens in 60 seconds. I don't want to get into the TikTok game. I know some of us have seen or hopefully seen the commercials or what have you, but TikTok is installed and used. Oh my God, look at how many times in 60 seconds. WhatsApp, people share so much information on WhatsApp every 60 seconds. I know Facebook, especially right now here in the US, they're getting beaten up quite a bit. People have different, perspective on Facebook, but it doesn't mean that 150,000 people don't share messages on Facebook Messenger every 60 seconds. YouTube uploads almost 500 hours of video every minute. My question to you all on this webinar, and my question to fellow communications professionals around the world, because again, social is used different in different countries. What are invisible insights does all of this? What can this possibly tell you? Yes, I've given you the statistics. Absolutely, you can see that. But what can you not see? And how valuable is it to you? Let's talk about it. So, dark data. I get a lot of interesting feedback when I talk about dark data because some people think, well, dark data is really, it's not attractive. It's like, looks a little rough on the surface. And you all have seen like a picture of like the iceberg on top and then like what's actually like underneath it. Same thing with dark data. It sounds ominous. It sounds sinister, like somebody's up to no good. Oh my God, it's dark data. Dun dun dun. It's coming to get you. It sounds that way. And then you say to yourself, it's like rough. Like, do I really? It's really difficult. I on the surface, it looks hard. Like I don't want to get into dark data. But really, it's like one of the most valuable things that you can use. And dark data, I'll talk about it, whether it's a blessing or a curse, it is good. It's a good thing. Dark data is rooted in technology. It looks at structured and unstructured data. As I mentioned, you can think about it like your text messages, photos, any of us who use, if you have an iPhone, if you use the Notes app to take notes, items that you might never use again, but you don't throw away, right? That's dark data. And according to the analyst firm Gartner, they say that dark data is information assets organizations collect, process, and store during regular business activities, but generally fail to use for other purposes. That's the basic definition of dark data. Like I said, it is not a bad thing. It's not coming to get you. I know in the US, we just celebrated Halloween. Other people celebrated Halloween. It's not bad. It's good. Whether you think it's a blessing or a curse, this is a good thing. dark data is all of the information that companies, organizations collect. And I mean all of the information. They might not use it. You might not have any plans to use it. You won't ever throw it away, but it's still good data. It still will tell you things that you didn't know before. And so as we collect and we communications professionals is organizations collect this vast amount of unstructured data, right? How do we know what to keep, what to throw out, what if we never use it or we never leverage it or we never go back? It's like, oh yeah, I have the surveillance footage, but I don't need it unless it's like, I don't know, if you watch any kind of, police crime show, don't you use the surveillance data when like something bad happens? Going back to dark data. Well, what if you use surveillance footage when something bad doesn't happen or just to better understand or to personalize something? That's really what the hope is for today. And so you have to think about making measurement matter. I think it's so important during measurement month that we are having this conversation about dark data so that you can make your measurement matter, right? So that you can understand, well, how if I look at this dark data, is it really going to help me get my business objectives or my communication goals? And so that's what, again, I'm hoping to help you with. And so we all know this. The days of evaluating PR campaigns, counting clips, measuring column inches, that is like a thing of the past. That's like 2 decades ago. We are in the digital age. We are in the social era. We are now in the, COVID reality era. Although that's gone. Now, PR professionals, PR is an industry, communications is an industry. We now have new tools at our disposal that can help us analyze earned media accomplishment with metrics. You all have probably seen there are a lot of vendors and a lot of companies that are out there that talk about measuring your data or getting the right metrics or what your KPIs. We have no shortage of tools. Companies have bought other companies to help with, PR tech, if you will. Marketing has done this really well, but PR tech to help us with our earned media coverage and to help us with our metrics. But how do you really make this matter? The most difficult part about capturing dark data, this is the most difficult part, is knowing what to look for and where to look for it without like messing up anything, without modifying your systems, breaking the structure. I've heard that from some colleagues and peers like, no, I can't go look for data there because it's going to mess up what we already have in place. I don't have the password to the program that does that, and I don't want to like break anything. I don't want to go find it. I've heard that a lot. Maybe you yourself might be saying that. But that's really the hardest part of scratching this surface. So you saw the iceberg at the top and then the bottom underneath is what to look for and where to look for it. And I'm here to tell you that varies, that changes by company. There are some companies and that varies by industry because dark data looks different for different industries. Dark data in healthcare looks very different than dark data in, say, energy and utilities. Dark data for oil and gas looks very different than dark data for retail. Now, look, there are some industries that have similar kind of principles, similar characteristics to the data, depending on the customer and what type of data you get from your customer, but it varies by industry. That's the same thing. I can't say that there's a one size fits all for dark data that, okay, if everybody goes here to look for this, and to do this with that, I can't, there's no like, magic bullet formula. What I really would like organizations and communications professionals to really understand and walk away with dark data is your return on insight. Of course, your ROI, your return on investment, I'll talk about that. But you really want to look at your return on your insight so that you can make the proper business case on how to support the process for like uncovering and unlocking dark data. You can look at various sources of your metrics, like, website clicks, referrals, mentions, passion, all the different metrics that we already are doing, right? That I hope we're already doing in terms of metrics. You can look at those, sure, of course, your source of your metrics, but you really need to understand that return on insight. So let's dissect a little bit of dark data. And interestingly enough, like images, like it's funny to see like these dissection images. I remember when I was in middle school, we had to dissect the frog, and like I think I boycotted it in like protest because it just did not sit well with me, like dissecting like a frog. And so I chose the dissection just because I was like dissecting the darkness, and I was like, ooh, that's a very sixth grade science class. But I really want to break it down. So in terms of like dissecting, if any of you get the same image that I got with the poor frog with the dissecting, and I was like, no, I'm not doing it because I just refuse to do that. I just want to break down how you look at dark data, right? How you can break that down. So let's take one of my favorite things to do, and I hope you are also tweeting how much you are loving the Beyonce of the business world as she talks about dark data by using the AMC, I think it's MM, hashtag AMECMM. Hope you're using that to say how much you are loving this presentation in this webinar, which I hope you are. But let's take a tweet. Let's dissect a tweet in terms of dark data and how you get to insights. I mean, most of us are on Twitter, or you've seen a tweet, or you've retweeted, or your organization's on Twitter. Okay. A tweet is dark, and we have dark in air quotes because we're talking about dark data, right? A tweet is dark as it needs to have the language extracted so that a computer can analyze what is actually written, right? Someone could tweet something that says, man, AMEC is so bad. Okay, that they might not mean that AMEC is bad. That might be that they're so good, or that can easily be. But how would the tweet itself just know that that's like the sentiment, that's what it means, right? The tweet itself, you would know that if you just read it. Do you know bad means good, what have you? So let's keep breaking down. So the metadata around the tweet is also dark, air quotes. The time of day the tweet was sent. Some of the tweets you all can see in the timeline, it'll say 1 hour, 2 hours, what have you. The at user, we can see who the at user is. So we look at the source. Okay, the person who sent the tweet, the hashtag that's used in the tweet, the device, you can see at the bottom, it'll say Twitter for mobile or Twitter desktop, and the location. Not everybody tags the location of their tweet. Some people do, some people don't. All of this information, again, dark, because how, like, you can say, well, I know, Brandy, you sent a tweet at this time or that time. Where did I send it from? Okay, can you see if I sent it from my phone or my computer? What else did I do? What was the sentiment? Going back to what I said about good versus bad. Do you really know what I meant? I refuse to send tweets without images. I love images. So I attach a GIF or a photo, right? So if a tweet contains an image, a video, a photo, an audio, how do you analyze that metadata of where that image came from? What does that mean? All of these things. This is what makes the tweet dark. Now, you could easily say to me, well, Brandy, I can shine a light and I can go down all these things about the tweet and find out all this information. You're right. You can do all that. Then what? What are you going to do once you find out how many followers, the user, the person who at mentioned, is the hashtag trending? Do a lot of people use the hashtag? Did people engage with it? What was the sentiment? All these things that you can do to shine a light so that the data is no longer dark. What do you then do with those insights once you've dissected the tweet? Some people don't do anything. They're just like, well, this is what, but then you could easily take if you answer all those questions about the sender, what's the sentiment, what was the engagement, is it high, is it part of Twitter benchmarks, is it higher than Twitter benchmarks, did it perform, did it not perform, did people retweet it, like all that, right? What do you then do? What do you do next? How do you take that insight that you just got from breaking down that tweet so that it's no longer dark to influence something that you're trying to do, or a communication or business objective you have? How do you do that? Or what do you do? One way you can shine a light. Now, you can do some of that. I use the tweet because you can use, and Twitter has built-in analytics as well for those of you who have Twitter accounts. So you can look at and you can answer some of those questions to shine the light to make it not dark anymore. But you can also use technological advancements like artificial intelligence, and I'll get into that. And so, in today's data rich environment, you should know everything about your customer or audience. You really should. And with dark data, you have to first start with what I call and what we say are data observations. Write this down, make a note. Step one, data observations. You have to look at your data in such a way that you can identify a pattern or a trend. And that might be you might look at the data 17 times, you might cut it 18 ways, but you need to start looking for and observing. Are there trends? Do things keep reoccurring? Did something happen on a particular day more than another day? Because the more data you have, the more you can learn about whether it's your customer. I even say this about your organization in general, right? Wherever we are working, our companies, our clients, the more data you have, the more you can learn. The interesting part and kind of like the push pull with data is we know a lot of this is manual. And especially if you are like a small to medium sized business, you might not have the biggest, PR, comms tech budget or MarTech budget to go out and spend money on platforms. Is you might be doing a lot of this manually. And we know that that takes a lot of time, that takes a lot of man hours. So how can you be most efficient if you're working on a shoestring budget, your company is not that big? Well, despite the fact that yes, there are some AI capabilities that are quite expensive, AI really allows you to take the dark data, and that's the beauty about artificial intelligence is it's machine learning, that it can learn over time, and you can program your AI capability to automate the task of finding this, digging for this data to find these gems that I'm talking about. Machine learning, the machine learns over time. So the more you give the input, find this metric, pull this out for me, it'll learn over time that that's the metrics that you want, that's the data that you need. It'll start looking at the dark data and just giving you boop, 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 what you need. It could do it in minutes, sometimes even in seconds. Now, again, I know all AI is not invented the same, and sure enough, it does not all cost the same. But the good news is you can take your structured data. So that's all of our lovely Excel sheets with all of our, cells and our formulas and all of the structured data we might have, and the unstructured data, the tweets, the emails, like all of the unstructured, combine them and pull the things that you need so that you can have the most accurate results. And I know, again, it can be scary by having a really large data set because you're like, well, Brandy, I just dumped all the structured data and unstructured. I just put it all here. I don't even know what to do with it. An AI capability, if you have the budget and you choose to use it, knows what to do with it. You can combine your structured and unstructured and it can start pulling. You can say, you know what? Some of these images, the source files of our images, the metadata for images, videos, audio, I don't know what to do with that. That's dark data. AI can start pulling that out. And so honestly, realistically, this requires structural changes for how, you use technology in your organization, but really this requires a shift in behavior. We as communications professionals, if we are going to utilize AI and we are going to look at technology and how it can help us with our measurement, that requires a behavior change. We don't think of ourselves as data scientists. I don't know a lot of PR people that are like, you know in addition to being an excellent storyteller, in addition to being an amazing crisis person, I am a data scientist. Would you like to see my white coat? I don't hear that a lot from communications professionals. However, I am here to tell you they are. even if they don't refer to themselves as data scientists, communications professionals, we are data scientists. And I'll tell you just a little bit more about that. But it really requires you to change your behavior and the structural changes at your organization. And so, just another thing I'd mentioned in the overview that I wanted to just quickly share with everyone is non textual data that could be dark, but it doesn't have to be dark. But how are you using it? So I have like the not so dark data. You all have heard the cliche, I know, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Well, in today's digital age, when we're all on the computer or the phone, this is like on steroids. Like multiply this by like a million in terms of a picture being worth 1,000 words. Non-textual data can help us highlight very important pieces of information that can be used as like a quick reference, right? And like I said, this data is not always dark. What is really interesting in today's world is the rise of a meme activity, or as my mom would say, meme. Brandy, what's a meme? I'm sure you all have heard that. The rise of meme activity and GIFs. That's a hard G, a GIF, hard G. It was like, oh, it's a GIF. It's a GIF, hard G, right? These are used as visually engaging and generate a lot of interest. I feel like we are in meme culture. You know how many things I have had turned into a meme of me? I don't have coffee first thing in the morning, and literally like, I have like I don't have coffee, don't talk to me face. Next thing I know, my colleague makes it a meme. I think it's funny, so I start sharing the meme of the brandy coffee face. And if anybody wants that meme, because I think I might have like shared it on Twitter and stuff, I'm happy to send it to you if you want to see it. It's really funny, but it was like I had like this face like don't talk to me because I haven't had my coffee, and then it became a meme and it was great. We live in meme culture. That's what people do, to share these photos, right? And to share kind of these images. But if you look at that, can memes help us identify a trend? Can memes help us compare and contrast something? Not necessarily, but non-textual data can, like a graph or a chart, or you could say, well, this meme worked, this meme didn't. It's almost like A/B testing. This worked, this didn't. Why? What are the insights I can use for this? But I do have a really good example of non-textual data creating insight. Now, I was, using the meme and the gifs. That's funny. If we want to use something that's really, something that you can really tangibly look at, and I can use this example, and then I have another example with weather, given IBM owns the weather company. If you look at a map, this is an example of how non-textual data can be used to gain insights about something. You can take a street map, right? Any map, you can use Google Maps, you can use, Apple Maps, whatever. You can take a street map, and it can show you the distribution of healthcare facilities in a particular city, in a particular area of a city. And you can look at those healthcare facilities and say, okay, they're in all these different neighborhoods, but I see a neighborhood, and I shouldn't say poor, I'll say an underserved family. How can they get adequate health care if I'm looking at the street map and I see that all the facilities don't happen to be in this zip code or near anywhere? What's the access that someone in an underserved community would have to getting adequate health care? You could make that correlation, you could make that case simply by looking at a street map. Same thing with the weather. Anyone has heard me say that when it rains, people eat more pie than cake when it rains. You can look at weather data, you can look at plate data and say, well, why is this happening? Why is this trend happening here as opposed to here? I think what's really interesting about looking at healthcare facilities, I know that at one point um, in healthcare and underserved communities, there was a study. I'm not sure if it was by Pew Research, but there was a study that looked at the number of fast food restaurants or fast food chains in a certain underserved community, looking at the correlation between obesity rates among Black and Hispanic based on the number of fast food locations in a particular community. Do you all know how many insights you can get from that? And again, I think either Pew or some study did, got the research. You have to think about non-textual data the same way. A picture can tell you so many things. You just have to know what to look for in the picture and how to tell it. And so, your new business strategy, this needs to be your new business strategy. In today's COVID-19 business climate, there is no doubt that data is competitive currency. It is. It gives you a competitive edge. Data is the new natural resource, as my former CEO would say. It is a form of competitive currency. And so, this, with what we're talking about data, but particularly dark data, really represents a huge opportunity for companies to gain valuable insights that can help drive your business. I'll get into like how you do that because you're like, all right, Brandy, I'm sold. Like, I want in, I want to do the dark data. What do I need to do? Okay. I'll tell you, but let me just make your new business strategy. Let me just, because you might have to go present this to your stakeholders or like your leaders. And so I just want to like set the stage and then I'll tell you to do it. But ignoring the challenge of dark data is basically like leaving money on the table. If anybody on the webinar wants to leave like a couple of $100 on the table and I'll just come scoop it up because I can access it or I know how to use dark data, you let me know. But ignoring this challenge of leveraging your dark data really is like leaving money on the table. So, back to what I said about communications professionals not considering themselves data scientists, here's where it gets really fun. Data science, wherever that sits in your organization, it could be IT, you have somebody else doing it, whatever. Marketing, communications, and PR, and business intelligence. So, if you have anybody who looks at big data, I know that some people have BI analysts on staff, or you have like a research team, like a market research team on staff. All of us need to come together to find new ways of activating dark data to provide new opportunities for the organization. That is why I'm so grateful for organizations like AMEC that look at measurement, that look at data, that look at all the things that we're doing and brings us together as communications professionals, bring, data strategists together so that we can look for ways. How do we do this? What's the best way? But we can't always rely on AMEC to give us amazing content and amazing thing. We have to do that within our organizations. So I challenge you all to go to your market research team or to go to your IT team and be like, are we working together? Like, can we work together on a dark data strategy? I bet you if you said that to one of your IT or they would be like, okay, do we need to have a dark data strategy? I didn't know that. Do we have a problem with dark data? Is it overtaking the company? I would just say as a communications person, yes, it's overtaking the company. We're leaving money on the table. And here's what we're going to do to ensure that we don't do that and that we have an adequate dark data strategy. Because one of the keys to unlocking your business value or that of your client or whatever you're doing, dark data and analyzing the dark data can help justify your spend, whether that's your marketing spend, whether that's your spend on content. If you start unlocking all the business value from dark data, you can use it as a business case. I need X amount of money to do this because dark data told me once I analyze, this is what's happening. So I need money to put towards this. Literally justifies your spend. I don't know about you, but tell a stakeholder that you need money, then show them the data as to why you need the money, then show them how you had to analyze dark data that wasn't even visible, that was hidden, and you pulled all the insights out of the hidden and you used an AI capability to do it. Who's not giving you money? Who would say, oh my God, I don't believe anything that you're saying. I can't justify giving you this budget. That's like a gold mine for you to justify your spend. And so dark data can provide a complete view of consumer habits, product usage, and just your overall performance as an organization. That's what I'm saying. It's a great way to make the business case for the spend. So this is your new business strategy. And like I said, people are like, all right, Brandy, I hope you're all in. I hope you're all in because you're going to say, All right, what do I need to do? Okay, Brandy, I'm sold on dark data. It's not bad. It's not ominous. It's not like, ooh, it's coming to get you. You want to capitalize on dark data, right? What do I need to do, Brandy? So glad you asked. So here's what you need to do. Okay. It's no secret that in order to get the most out of dark data and the things that I've been saying, organizations, we need to be better. We need to have better processes in place. I've already kind of said that. Better coordination, better technology, and you need to change your habits a little bit, the way in which you do the work that could fall into processes. But that's no secret. I've told, I've shared with you kind of the ins and outs of dark data, what it is, how to extract, break it down, dissect it. It requires some things on your end, right? Processes, habits, the way we work, coordination, tech. Dark data is valuable because there's so much of it. Go back to the chart that I showed you with everything that happens in 60 seconds. I said those were invisible insights, but my God, look at all the data that is generated from all those platforms in 1 minute. Dear Lord, in 5 minutes, you have like a treasure trove of data and insights that you can pull from. And that's like the beauty of dark data is there's so much of it. The key to uncovering dark data's secrets lies in the ability to understand the relationships between seemingly unrelated pieces. On the surface, they might look like they have nothing to do with each other, but in reality, they do. You have got to dig. You have got to shine that light, whether that's the AI light or you want to do it, manually if you can't afford AI. You have got to go deeper with dark data and really understand the relationships between things that might not seem like they relate to you. So, 4 key takeaways that I just want to share. One, very first thing, you've got to establish your goals. You can't go to the market research team or your IT team or your data science team if you don't have a plan. Like I said, we all have to come together. It's great. We have webinars we're facilitating, but you can't go anywhere without a plan. So step one, you've got to establish your goals. You've got to establish what your communication goals are, what your business goals are, whatever they may be. Measurable results aligned to business and communication goals that are created provide evidence of tangible contribution to organizational performance improvement. You can't start this dark data journey and your new business strategy using dark data if you don't have your goals determined. And then how dark data and you're analyzing this data ties back into your business goals, your communication goals, whatever it is. So that's the very first thing you all have to do. Got to establish your goals. Then secondly, you need to regularly audit and structure your database of the current data that you have available to you today, right now. Storage, whatever kind of storage, whether it's Gmail, iCloud, whatever storage you have for data, it's becoming more, it's like increasingly cheap. It's more and more inexpensive. But you need to look at the data that you have today. You need to organize your data in categories and you need to do it consistently. So every month, if you want to do your dark data audit, or you want to do your data audit, great. But you need to look at the data that you have available, like what is like literally, and you can determine your categories however you want, but it's like, what's data that we just have got to look at? We've got to keep this data. You can do like, high, low, medium. You can be like, we can't live without this data, or oh, this was nice data, but like we don't really need it. But then again, do we really need it? So you need to look at categories of how the data that you have today, how you can structure that, and just look at it again every month. If you know what's coming in, data we got to keep. And it's really to help you understand whatever data that you have, especially if you're looking at customer data. Is it designed to serve your customer, or are you just looking at data to sell your customer? Most people look at data to like sell. How can I target? How can I upsell them something else? What else can they buy from me? It's not really personalized unless you take the Amazon approach. When you purchase one thing at Amazon, they suggest many other things. And you're like, oh, well, Brandy, if you liked this book, maybe you'll like this book. And it's like, okay, so they start personalizing to make me feel like they're servicing me in some way, giving me what I want and not really selling me. So again, if you look at your data, audit it, put it in categories, look at what you have, then you can start deciding, what should I keep? What do I not want to keep? Should I be looking in another place or looking at something else? You'll be able to determine that. Third, I hear this a lot when it comes to data security. A lot of people say, is it secure? If I use this, is it secure? And we also know with data, especially in places like California, you have to opt in to give someone your data or for someone to leverage your data. If you think about what's happening in Europe with GDPR, we all want to be data responsible. Data responsibility in terms of communications professionals, that we all want to practice being data responsible. One way you can look at when you're extracting your dark data, and kind of like I said about the database, and you're looking at where you are, is you can encrypt your data. I'm a huge advocate of encryption. You can encrypt your most valuable data. It's almost like, the keys to the family, jewels, or the family prize, or the organization's pride. You can encrypt, but I do want to make it clear that everything that we do with dark data and everything that we do to leverage this data for insights must be done responsibly, in a responsible way that adheres to any, depending on where you are in the US or otherwise, that speaks to any kind of data transparency and ethics principles. But we just want to make sure we are data responsible. Encryption is a good way to do that. And then finally, talk tech, or tech talk. Emerging technologies, as I've already said, like AI, can help improve engagement around dark data, analyze the data faster, and plan future strategies so that you can be more effective. And this got cut off at the bottom, but when you use technology to help us with our large data sets, or when it's really scary, when you use technology for that, automation can help prevent, I should say, human error. Do you know how many times bad things have happened due to human error? Someone just Twitter fingers. I get that a lot. There was a few years ago on the US stock exchange, someone did a stock trade. It was only supposed to be for 1,000 shares. He touched, it was 1,000,000, all because the fingers accidentally went from 1,000, added the zero. Human error. So technology, really good way to not only help you achieve your business goals, to help you analyze the dark data, but also to help prevent some human error. And so with that, thank you all so much for your time. I truly appreciate. Thank you, Jonna, AMEC, for just allowing me to kind of share some of my thoughts on dark data.
Brandy, thank you so much. It's so interesting as we navigate technology, and everybody's learning and everybody's going through this process together, that the perspective of data can be so different. And it's so funny. So your perspective as an American in New York, you talk about California, and meanwhile with GDPR, and some of the Europeans are like, California, please hold our drink, right? So it's how things are catching up, and what that perspective is. And I think that some of the challenges that we see in this really is just an understanding of how that data comes in. And the one thing that you said, I think that's so important, is context and looking at trends, because that's really going to be kind of that index, and lead to that indicator of what people can find. One of the questions that we have is, we have a lot of our customers who also use WhatsApp, and we aren't able to track those conversations unless we are part of those groups.
Mhm.
How do you suggest decoding some of those same preferences without access to those platforms and the API?
Absolutely. I mean, that's a great question. And, not to encourage like stalking or sleuthing, especially if you're not part of a certain group, but going back to patterns and trends, people who are sharing messages in WhatsApp, even though you can't track per se, that's not the only thing that they're doing, right? Typically, they might say something on LinkedIn or post something on a platform where you can track or you can make it visible. Going back to like that whole data visible things that we can see, and then the invisible insights when you see all the stuff that's happening on social media. So if you look at just the activity, WhatsApp has a ton of activity where you might not be able to penetrate that specifically if you're not part of the group. If the members of the group, they're doing other things that you can track, then use that insights based on the patterns of the behavior that they're doing and other things to say, I bet this came up in the WhatsApp too, because then I saw somebody posted. So the chances that it's only exclusive to WhatsApp are slim, that very slim, unless it's a really like sensitive, highly like, kind of confidential topic. But it's patterns in there on other platforms can track to just make some not as real assumptions, but just look at some of the things that could be shared as well in the WhatsApp.
And I think that's so critical is, looking at things across platforms, across those trends. And, I think there becomes this challenge for everyone as communication professionals are seeing more data. There does become that
Yes.
paralysis of that overload that they have, right? And so
Yes.
looking at it in isolation can be deceptive. And sometimes because it's easy to get or because it's, more accessible,
Yeah.
people fall into that trap really of making that a key element of a customer profile of doing that analysis. And I think those are the pitfalls that are so critical to make sure that you don't fall into that trap. Some of the things that we talk about in the new Barcelona principles is bias in data too, and I know that that's part of
Yes.
your new role. So can you talk a little bit about, there's bias innately in everything, in
Everything.
algorithms, in everything, and I know that we could have you talk for probably 7 hours just on that topic,
Bias.
but how do you advise and kind of structure some of that big data so that you are eliminating some of that bias without diluting the insights and the results that you're going to get and be able to extract those?
Absolutely. So, we this is such an ongoing topic for me and my company. But one of the very first things that we do around bias and AI is to establish trust and AI principles. So to first establish kind of these are the things that we do in terms of AI, because if you again, I said the machine with machine learning, the machine is learning. Well, what if it's learning the wrong thing or it's learning something that's heavily biased, the output that you're going to get heavily biased. However, if you know going in, these are the principles I have set around my AI, so I know I will follow these 5 things or these 3 things. And we have trust and transparency principles for our AI, our marketing teams, our HR teams. That's what they adhere to. So first, I would say to establish some AI principles. Second, we have an AI ethics board that reviews everything. As you can imagine, with technology, with software, with various things like facial recognition, that could get you in a lot of trouble if you don't have a checks and balances or a board to propose something to say, you know what? Not only does it meet our principles and checks, okay, what we've established for transparency, but who else does this affect, with what we're using it for? So even if it's like your key stakeholders, we're a large organization, so our AI ethics board has a lot of people. But even if it's just your key stakeholders, you should probably have like a kind of governance board. I think that that's really important because it can't be AI, your AI bias and ethics can't just fall on one person. Sure, if you want to have one person be like your AI ethics person, I know like in other organizations you have an ethics person, great. But it needs to be holistically governance has to be a company responsibility. It can't just be like for one person. So I would say, first establish some principles have some type of governance board or something of where, AI could affect various parts of the organization. And I would just, continue to educate yourself around AI ethics, because this is something that comes up in academia. This is something that comes up in just in our day to day. So just like make sure that you're aware of, studies being published around AI ethics, what some, professors and educators are saying around AI ethics. Those would be just three ways I would say. And again, I could talk about AI ethics and go into so many trust principles. I could like talk about data responsibility all day, but yes, those are just three basic I would give.
And I think that's so critical. I think it was an MIT study, and I can't remember it right now, foggy brain, but it was talking about that just as much as you are looking at stakeholder profiles, if your organization is doing any programming, you need to have a programmer profile, because there is that natural bias that programmer can write into things as well. So
Yes.
that's probably a whole different conversation. But I mean, it really is so critical that as you look through that supply chain of data and information from conception, to be able to look at that. How do you advise the professional who might be using, Google so heavily? And we have a couple of members who are doing some interesting things with Google search, that they're able to, inform the community on what that looks like. But I mean, when those are kind of that black box profile of the algorithm and what they're trying to do, what's some of the best practices that you can suggest for people who are putting together a monitoring and evaluation program using things that they aren't really controlling, to put that ethics board behind that already?
Yeah, and to be honest, and I love the question, Jana, because the Google algorithm, as you know, it changes so frequently. Even now today in COVID times, I thought before COVID, because it changed pretty like weekly, like it's even more so now, because again, how many people are so heavily, to your point, relying on Google search everything? Honestly, my honest, just Brandy Boatner feedback opinion is professionals who are in that space and looking at and measuring, and you don't really have control, learn how to code or learn the basic principles of coding. Because coding, as we know, looks at algorithms and ones and O's and various things. And if you just have basic understanding, I taught myself Python coding language. I did it because someone was like, oh, you're a girl and you just need to do basic Java. And I'm like, do you know me? Nothing basic about Brandy Boatner. So thank you. I'll go to the hardest thing to learn. But if you teach yourself coding to understand how algorithms work, I'm not saying you're going to crack the Google algorithm. I don't even think there are people at Google who are creating these algorithms that can crack the Google algorithm. I think you will better understand why certain algorithms trigger certain things as it relates to data. Now, if you want to take a basic coding, class, if you want to, I think that just in general is good for professional development. But if you are really living in this space, to your point, Jonna, where you're looking at search, it wouldn't help to understand algorithms so that you're just like, oh, wait a minute. Again, not saying you're going to crack the black code, but you'll just have a deeper understanding of how this all works together and how you can take data and just really improve the results and the performance that you're trying to achieve. So that's just my personal opinion, is learn how to code.
Well, and I love the Beyonce of comms feedback on that, because I think there really are those elements that seem intimidating, because we've been doing what we're doing and learning those new skills. And during COVID, there's two very clear parties. There's one who is, I've learned a new language.
Yeah.
Tell these,
I bake all these cookies and yeah.
Exactly. I'm now the Martha Stewart of whatever.
Totally.
And then there is this other group who are like, we're in survival mode.
I barely can get to 5 p.m. every day.
Exactly. And then there's this kind of third small party who realizes that we have the next generation is being homeschooled by day drinkers. And so we're kind of really taking a different assessment of things. But I think that the coding piece is so critical. And I think for people in communication, especially, yes, it's a new skill, but it is a language of the consumer. and really such a critical piece. So I love that. I admit that I am very guilty of purchasing a couple of coding books for my niece and not so gently or subtly encouraging her to, be that, and to purchasing two so that she can share with a friend so that they can do that together.
And so why can't you do it with her?
Yeah, I can. I mean, no, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I'm a huge proponent of that because I think it really is so critical. So, Brandy, we have time for one more question, and
Sure.
comes in, and this is not the trick question. I think that it appears to be, but um, when talking to your stakeholders and getting that buy-in, you talked about having a plan and having those things. And I'm very happy to say that AMEC has a planning guide that you can use. It's a free resource, it's a free tool. We also have the integrated evaluation framework that can help organizations who may not be like IBM, that have all of that structure and have those layers to be able to build that in. But when you're talking about getting buy-in, how critical is it to identify the data sets that you're going to be using specifically in your plan when you need to go back and then conduct that audit?
Yeah, I think it's you use the where you're getting the sources of data. I don't think necessarily I would have it if you in your plans like a backup if someone were to ask you. I really think in all the stakeholder reviews I've had, it's almost like you give it the 2 a.m. test. If I were to wake my stakeholder up at 2 a.m., what do I want to tell them immediately, right? About something that's happening, or so when you make that business case, again, have the sources of the data as in case you are asked, but don't focus on that. Really focus on the data. Like I said, what the data is telling you. Oh, we used AI. We pulled this out of the dark data. It says this. Like, just really kind of take them again, the 2 a.m. test, take them through the steps. But really is like, this is how we grow. This is how we increase revenue. This is how we reach and touch the customer. That's really what you want to focus on. And like I said, you can have the sources, but that's not really, that's for us, the communicators. We can share best practices on, various sources. But when it comes time for stakeholder review, keep it short, simple, to the point, and how you will grow the business.
I love it. Thank you so much, Brandy. Thank you everyone for joining us today. And please come back on the 4th when we have another AMEC Measurement Month presentation about SEO and how that affects measurement and evaluation with one of our board of directors, James Crawford. A big special thanks again to Brandy Boatner for giving your
Thank
time and for sharing your
you. Thanks,
expertise. And we
Shauna.
really appreciate all of your efforts. And thank you everyone for joining us, and enjoy Measurement Month, a month of mostly free learning and fun. Thanks everyone.
Thanks, everybody.